All right, finally getting to another video for you just because the sound was bad filming at home, Clark. Thanks for your patience. Okay, so you can do a similar type of work for your wrist extension as you've done with your hips when it comes to 90-90 work. And so the premise would first be you do some kind of long stretch, which can be a pale rail procedure, where you hold a passive stretch for a period of time, and then you want to pull into your stretch deeper through active strength. And then you can also work on angular holds. So I'll kind of try and walk through that pretty quickly here since you are familiar with a little bit of that. So if you were to do some pails and rails, and I find these super effective, you're gonna have your hand on the floor. It can be both hands at the same time. You can go hand backwards, but basically you need to lever your body in one direction to generate a stretch on the opening side angle, right? So usually if I'm lacking some wrist extension, I need to be stretching this side and strengthening this side to pull into the range. So I want to feel a stretch. So I can feel a stretch perhaps by loading forwards this way. There should be no pinching on the closing angle. It should be opening stretch. It could be this way. Okay, so I'm going to lean back and recall your pale rail procedure. About 2 minutes of an easy passive stretch, nothing intense. And then you're going to have your pail and then your rail. Okay, so 2-minute passive stretch. My pail in this case would be trying to exit wrist extension. So I'm trying to exit wrist extension, which would be flexion, but it's isometric, the floor is in the way. I start really gentle, okay, and on-ramp more and more and more, okay? I think it's helpful for that to only press through your knuckles first, and then press through your second knuckles, and then get to your third knuckles, and then add your fingertip, and then eventually everything's pressing down. So layer through that build. It's not all zapping at once. It's slow and progressive. Pail is usually about 20 seconds. And then your rail is pulling yourself into wrist extension. So in this case, I'm gonna try and pull my fingers off the floor. It's not gonna happen. It's impossible for my particular mobility in this angle. If I decrease the angle, now it's much easier, but I'm not doing anything there. But movement is not important. What's important is I'm stressing the area I want to work. So if I'm feeling that area work, that's all that matters. The rail doesn't need to be so progressive. It can kind of be hard right away. So first of all, try that. Sometimes I'll do that like bilateral leaning backwards, be bilateral leaning forwards. Any way you load the stretch is fine, right? You could do it with your hand like on a box or something. Anyway, it's fine. Okay, so that's a good thing to do. What we could also work on is just lift-offs. So you're gonna pick a angle to work from. So really easy would be right now, I guess this is like 180 degrees or so, or 0 degrees, I guess. And right now I'm pulling to about, we'll say 85, 80, right? Not fantastic. My right arm wrist extension also not great. And if I start at more of a deficit, so now I'm already at 35-degree angle of my wrist, try and pull. There's a bigger demand on mobility and strength, right? If I get more on top, now I'm already at like a 70 degree. I can get a little bit of my fingertip and my thumb. Feeling a lot of working now. Just trying to find something that you don't bend to the elbow much. So you could do lift-offs. You can do those bilateral, right? Another one that I used to do quite a bit would be positional holds. So this is good work after a pail and rail. I know this video is really long, but I'm gonna use an assisting hand here. Okay, and I know that 0 degrees is really easy, okay? So if I took off my assisting hand and tried to hold this degree of wrist extension, it's super easy. So if I use my assisting hand and bring myself to say 45 degrees, I'm gonna keep my fingers straight and long. I'm gonna take off my assisting hand in a second, but I'm gonna get tense beforehand. So I'm gonna start to contract my other arm almost everywhere, lengthen my fingers, take off the assisting hand, and I should be able to maintain that 45-degree angle. Obviously, this is an awkward position to do this in. Okay? And I'd practice 5, 10, 15-second holds with the rest in between. Do a set of 3 or 4 reps, take a big rest and repeat. And then over time, I should be able to see that my passive assistance, let's say 65 degrees, okay? I should be able to improve that hold. So that would be a passive range hold. First one's a lift off. Both are pretty good. Those are some big ones you can use. Make sure you're changing up the type of car. I'm not sure if we've talked about this too much, but like you could do a fully splayed hand car, right? You could do a closed fist wrist car. You could do a thumbs out wrist car, which is strange You could do a lot of things, right? 2 fingers will all feel different. On that note, you could also do a little bit of a weight in your car. So put a light weight, probably like a 1 pound weight, and work through full range deviation, full range extension and flexion, and round in those corners. And then also what you can do with your cars is, and you've done this in other ways, I think I've given this to you in the past with your hips, is do segments of the car that you need to work on the most. So if your extension is tough, work on extension. So I don't know how well you can see this, but I'm gonna try and hold myself to be mostly still in my position. I'm not gonna worry about flexion too much because flexion's super good. I'm gonna first work into my adduction. I'm gonna get into as much extension as I can. I'm gonna get into my abduction, and I'm gonna go back in kind of like a semicircle fashion, right? Or I could just work on adduction to extension, back and forth. And I'm trying to make that arc as strict as possible, right? I'm working to hold as much extension through the process back and forth. I could work on just that side for 3 or 4 reps, and then abduction to extension. So that's a lot of stuff, but let me know what kind of questions you have or questions on like reps and sets and stuff, and I can give you some thoughts. But the only thing I'd recommend is don't go too nuts, because you can really upset the elbow with this type of stuff and the wrist if you just go into it too hard, too fast, just like anything I say. So just be smart, and I hope that is fun.